So the translation of the first verse, number 23, is, after the end of Brahma's night, the creation of the three worlds begins again in the daytime of Brahma, and they continue to exist through the life durations of 14 consecutive Manus, or fathers of mankind. Purport. At the end of the life of each Manu, there are shorter dissolutions also. So, at the end of each of the Manus, there's some sort of a dissolution. Svam svam kalang manur bhunkte sadikam ye saptatim. Each and every Manu enjoys a life of a little more than 71 sets of the 4 millenniums. Report. The duration of life of a Manu comprises of 71 sets of the 4 millenniums, as described in the Vishnu Purana. The duration of life of one Manu is about 852,000 years. In the calculation of the demigods, or in the calculation of human beings, 306,720,000 years. In the next verse, Manutareshu Manaivash Tad Vangshya Rishaya Suraha Bhavanti Chaiva Yugapat Sureshash Chenu Ye Tatan. Translation. After the dissolution of each and every Manu, somebody's making noise. I don't know who.
Sorry.
Oh, there we go. Okay. After the dissolution of each and every Manu, the next Manu comes in order, along with his descendants, who rule over the different planets. But the 7 famous sages, the demigods like Indra and their followers, such as the Gandharvas, all disappear simultaneously with Manu. Purport. There are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma, and each of them has different descendants. Text 26. Esha Dainan Dinasargo Brahmas Trilokya Vartanaha Tiryan Nri Pitri Devanam Sambhavo Yatra Karma Bihi. In the creation, during Brahma's day, the 3 planetary systems, Svarga, Martya, and Pātāla, revolve, and the inhabitants, including the lower animals, human beings, demigods, and Pitās, appear and disappear in terms of their fruitive activities. And 2 more. 27 is Bhatareshu Bhagavan Bibrat Satvang Swamurtibihi Manya Man Avdibir Idang Vishvam At Yadita Paurushaha. In each and every change of Manu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears by manifesting his internal potency in different incarnations, as Manu and others. Thus he maintains the universe by discovered power. And then the last verse for today is Tamo Matram Upadhaya Pratishang Ruda Vitkramaha Kalenanu Gata Shesha Aste Sushning Dinat Yane. I'm sorry, Yaye. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, under the insignificant portion of the mode of darkness, the powerful manifestation of the universe merges in the darkness of night. By the influence of eternal time, the innumerable living entities remain merged in that dissolution, and everything is silent. Purport. This verse is an explanation of the night of Brahmā, which is the effect of the influence of time in touch with an insignificant portion of the modes of material nature in darkness. The dissolution of the three worlds is effected by the incarnation of darkness, Rudra, represented by the fire of eternal time, which blazes over the three worlds. These three worlds are known as Bhu, Bhuva, Sva, Pātāla, Martya, and Svarga. The innumerable living entities merge into that dissolution, which appears to be the dropping of a curtain of the scene of the Supreme Lord's energy, and so everything becomes silent. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, so a lot of or several callers today. We only have 2 or 3 people that can even see my screen, but I kind of prepared a elaborate PowerPoint. So for whoever wants to take advantage of this, here we go. Okay, I just got to change the screen. Monitor 2. There you go. Okay. So maybe for the benefit of the callers, I'll try and explain as much as I can as far as what I'm showing. But in the time that I have, I wanted to try and explain 2 main points from these 6 verses that we covered. Of course, there's many points, but I chose 2. One was that I wanted to put in perspective the duration of Manu's lifetime compared to human years, which of course will remind us how insignificantly tiny our duration of life is and how valuable it is. That's one point. And then the other thing is that why do we trust this information? Why do we accept it? We should ask. Because after all, the lifetime of Manu compared to ours is fantastic. So is this information true? Or is it just a fairy tale or something just far-fetched? Why do we accept the authority of the Srimad Bhagavatam? So first of all, a Divya Yuga, just to put this in perspective, or to try to give us an understanding of these fantastic numbers that we're talking about. A Divya Yuga, or the 4 yugas, Kali, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga, put together is 4,320,000 years. Fantastic. Just to go back even 3,000 years ago is so difficult that historians just consider anything past 3,000 years as being mythology. So you can imagine going back hundreds of thousands, and we have millions of years, and that's just one Divya Yuga, 4.3 million years. But the life of Manu is 71 of those Divya Yugas, which comes out to be 306, almost 307 million years. So I'll do my best for those that are on the phone. What I'm holding up in front of us here is a single sheet of paper. So let's pretend this sheet of paper represents one of our years here in our lifetime on Earth. So very thin little sheet of paper here, almost floats in the air. It's so thin. So if you take 100 of those sheets, and if you're looking here, 100 sheets put together, it's got some more substance to it. It's about that thick. that's if we're lucky, we can live 100 years in the Kali Yuga, which is of course rare. But that gives you an idea of what we're talking about. Now, if you take a ream of paper, 500 sheets, it looks like this. If you take a ruler, I know it's going to be hard to see this, but trust me here. You take a ruler like this and you put it up against this ream of paper, 500 sheets, it's almost precisely 2 inches, just slightly over 2 inches. So if you take 2 reams of paper, that's 1,000 sheets. So that would be just like the thickness of 4 inches like this would be our 1 year compared to 1,000 years. So if you can just follow that logical progression. So to try and get some sort of a grasp of what our lifetime is like, or our years are compared to the lifetime of Manu, it would be just like this. You would take that 1,000 sheets and compare it to years. So you would take the 307 odd million years divided by 1,000 years. In other words, you just take 3 zeros off of it, it becomes 306,000 years, or 1,000, and then you multiply that by 4 inches, and you get a grand total of 1.2 million inches. So, of course, so what does that mean? No, it's difficult to visualize what is 1,226,880 inches. 1.2 million inches, still like it's just a number. But to make it meaningful, you'd have to divide by 12 and make it feet. Then that's a little bit easier to understand. So if anybody, I didn't mute anybody, but if anybody wants to take a crack at it, if you've got a calculator, if you can just figure it out real quick, how many feet would 1.2 million inches be? And the answer is, go to the next slide. Come on. Here we go. Okay. Now what we're looking at is a projection of the Earth, where you can see the curvature of the Earth and out into space. It would be over 100,000 feet, 102,240 feet. So over 100,000 feet. So most of us have been up in commercial airliners, and it cruises at 36,000 feet. So we're talking about is 3 times the height of what a commercial aircraft would travel at. In other words, over 31 kilometers or 20 miles into the stratosphere. Actually, it goes into the ionosphere. At that point, there's still gravity, but it's so high up that you're out in space. So for anyone who's looking at this, it's quite a height. So to give another example of how high that is, in 2012 in Roswell, New Mexico, there was a Australian skydiver by the name of Felix Baumgartner. Felix Baumgartner. He set the world's record for a free fall, and he went up in a specially designed weather balloon. It was all financed by the Red Bull, some big company. Anyway, he went up in this weather balloon. It took him 2 hours to get to a height of over 100,000 feet above the surface of the Earth. He jumped out of the weather balloon, and it took him over 15 minutes to free fall to Earth. He broke the sound barrier. He was going so fast. He was going over 800 miles an hour. And it still took him 15 minutes to fall to the Earth. So you can just try and imagine what a height that is from the surface of the Earth 20 miles into the ionosphere. And that's by stacking all these sheets of paper up all the way up. So that's what our years are compared to the lifetime of one Manu. Just incredible. Hard to imagine. So let's go to the next slide. So what we're looking at here is the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I have a question mark there. So why do we accept this authority? Why do we believe this? I mean, we're talking about a fantastic duration of life that Manu has. He's the father of mankind, but I've never seen him, and probably I never will see Manu. So why do we believe this on the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam? Well, if Manu is the father of mankind, we have President Obama at this time, who's can be considered the father of the nation. So I've never personally met him. I've never actually seen him with my own eyes. But, everybody accepts that the guy actually exists and he's the president. So why do we accept that? One thing is that, everybody else accepts. So we would kind of feel strange, or they might lock us up or something if we're the only person around that doesn't believe that President Obama actually exists, or he's the president. Also, we can read things in the newspapers, or see on the news about him all the time. He's speaking, and also, if you break the laws, even though he's he's the executive head, not exactly the legislation, but still, the point is that even if he's not like a king who just or a dictator, but still the point is that he's the head of the country. So if you break the laws of the country, there's consequences, and he has a lot to do with enacting how the country is run. And the other thing is that you could at least theoretically go to Washington, D.C., and go to the White House and actually see the guy in person. Although, at least in my case, that's not really likely, but sometimes he comes to Hawaii. Actually, a couple of months ago, I saw the Air Force One right there at Hilo Airport. I couldn't believe it. What in the world he was doing in Hilo? But anyway, I never saw the guy. But, you can accept that such a person exists. So what about Manu? Can we accept? Well, we have about the same criteria. If you think about it, anyone who is a follower of the Vedas certainly accepts that Manu is the father of mankind, that he does exist, that he's presently alive. He's going to be alive for much, much longer than any of us. And you can read all about him in the Puranas, just like we're reading from the Bhagavad Purana. And if you break the laws, universal laws, there are consequences for them. Those laws are given in the Manu Samhita. And theoretically, you could go to Svarga and you could actually meet him. So we have the same kind of things for Manu, just as we have for Mr. Barack Obama, but we also have personal experiences. Each and every devotee that's been practicing Krishna consciousness has subjective experiences that cannot be denied uh, about the efficacy of the authority of the Srimad Bhagavatam. However, that is subjective. So anyone who's skeptical will say, no, I need objective proof. However, we should have to point out that everything is based on faith. All of our daily workings, we can't step outside the door without relying on faith. Just like if we get on an airplane, we have no idea how the thing runs or who's even in the cockpit, or if this thing, if it takes off from the ground, it's not going to crash. We just have faith, that we paid our money and we're safe. every time we get in a car and we start going down the road at 55 miles an hour, people are in other cars coming directly at us, and the only thing that's separating us from immediate death is a thin 2-inch white line. But we have faith that the other guy is not going to cross over. Or if we put our money in the bank or something, we just expect it's going to be there in the morning. What to speak of things like evolution, the Big Bang? I mean, you talk about speculation, but we accept it. Why? Because we accept it on authority. So when we accept only those things in front of our eyes, we're very, very limited. This is called pratyaksha. What's in front of our no, pratyaksha. But a much better way to understand the world, and which everyone does, is they accept authority, and that's called shabda. There's something called praman, which is evidence. We accept evidence out of faith that we acquire through shabda. Uh, and the more we accept the authority, the more faith we have, because our senses are faulty, and everyone knows that. Uh, Actually, our mind, being guided by the intelligence, it compensates for all kinds of faulty perceptions that are in this world. So what I'm going to do in the next few slides is try and illustrate that. Of course, this is going to be really difficult for anybody that's not watching this, but we have two images here. Let's see what the time is. Wow, 6:30. We have two images here. Now, this is not trick photography, it's just depth photography. Uh, I'm trying to point out here that depth distorts size. The farther you are away from something, the smaller it is, and the closer you are, the bigger it is. So here we have two images, one of this guy who's flicking away his car in the desert. It looks like a little matchbox, and he's just flicking it away. And then the other image is of one fellow who's picked up his girlfriend. Looks like he's going to drop her into his mouth. And that's all done by distance. She's off way, way in the distance, and she looks tiny, 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 like a little mouse. And he's like picking her up with his fingers and dropping her in her mouth. That's what it looks like. So our eyes are so defective that our eyes actually see something very small that's in the distance, and this like dramatically shows you how our eyes deceive us. So depth distorts size, and also angle distorts shape. So here we have an image of some drawings. One is oblique drawing of a man, a person, and then the other are different angles from above and below. And so when the artist draws them, they sketch it, all they're doing is actually turning at a certain angle, and the image becomes squashed, and then you compensate it for this by understanding that we're looking from above, we're looking from below, or we're looking obliquely straight on. But our eyes actually only see things at different slants. Our mind compensates by saying, oh, this is a projection from above, below, or straight forward. Okay, so now we go to the next slide. So there's a little cartoon here, and it's from one side, it looks like 4 lines. Actually, it's going to be too difficult to explain what we're watching. I'm just going to, for those that can see this, you can see that the cartoon, that from your angle of vision, one looks like 4 lines, and then from the other angle of vision, it really looks like 3. So they're arguing back and forth. One says, no, it's 4 lines. The other says, it's 3. Actually, perception is completely subject to our angle of vision. So the next 4 slides are, some of these are quite popular. They're used in psychology. This is probably one of the most famous sketches. This is called the duck rabbit. So if you look at it, you can see either a duck or a rabbit. I hope everybody can see that here. Uh, the interesting thing is that when they're simple images like this, you can see the separation. It looks in one way it looks like a duck, and another way it looks like a rabbit. But you can't see them simultaneously. You can see one or the other. You have to switch your mind back and forth. So that's a famous one. This is another famous one. Can anybody say what this is? It's a woman. Is it a young woman or an old?
Yeah.
Young?
It's a both an old woman and a young woman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is like one of those classic ones. Yeah, so
It's a classic, yeah.
you have to switch your mind between
Really good.
either old or a young woman off to the side. Okay, now we're going to go to another one. Now this is more complex, but the interesting thing about it is you can see both simultaneously. So tell me what you see. Anybody?
Oh. Well, yeah, there's a skull and there's like two people.
Yeah.
Woman and man.
With collars.
Can you see them both simultaneously?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, huh? Okay, now let's go to the
Yeah.
next one. This is going to be more complex. Tell me what you see. Anybody? You obviously
A man's face and then someone playing on a flute.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So you can see both simultaneously, the man's face and then the fellow with the flute with the girl in the back. Now this is the hardest one, our last one here. Okay, do you see that? I'm sure you see the kids sitting on the bank of the river, but does anyone see anything else? Anybody? Or do you just...
Someone with squiggly hair looking to the left.
Okay. Can you tell what it is?
An old woman?
No, it's a lion. And he's pushing
right.
gently against an elephant. You see the trunk of the elephant?
Oh, yeah.
So now you can see it. Now your mind immediately can go to it. Now you can see both images, both the river with the kids and the man, and then you can also see the elephant and the lion snuggling up against each other. So even though your eyes see one thing, your mind, now because it recognizes it, it can immediately go to it. Now, if you see it again, your mind would immediately see those two objects, although it was very difficult before.
We lost you for about a minute, Prabhu.
Oh, really? Oh,
yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right after the elephant.
Right after the elephant. Okay, I was just saying that once you can recognize the lion and the elephant, your mind will immediately go to it. Then you can always see it. Once the intelligence has trained the mind, then the mind sees it as well.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
All right, now what we're going to talk about is four-dimensional space. Now, there's a reason that we're going through all this. It has to do with accepting the authority of the Bhagavatam. But in order to logically progress to that point, I have to try and explain this. So there's a way to look at a fourth dimension. And there's many dimensions above 4 dimensions, but let's start with the fourth dimension. There's something that are called four-dimensional polytopes, which is a general term for geometric forms, such as you see pictured here. These are what are referred to in geometry as platonic solids, because each of the vertices, those little, well, let's see, let me point with my little finger here. So wherever there's a point, that's called a vertices. And when an edge connects the vertices to some sort of a geometric figure, and they all share the same vertices, that way you can go all the way around and there's no gaps. So there's only certain geometric forms that you can do that with, and those are called plutonic solids. And from those solids, you can go into the fourth dimension, which I'll try and demonstrate in the next slide. So some of these will be videos, moving videos. So we're talking about four-dimensional polytopes. The most famous is a tesseract, which is a hypercube. What you're seeing now is a representation of a fourth dimension cube being spun. Now it's hard to tell what's going on. It looks like it's growing and intersecting, and now it pops out back into three-dimensional space. And you see actually what it is 8 three-dimensional cubes that have been folded into themselves because they're in another dimension of space, a fourth dimension. For example, like if you're looking at a regular three-dimensional cube, it's got 8 vertices and 12 edges and 6 faces. So if you can just imagine that. But when you go into another dimension, everything increases. So instead of having 8 vertices, it gets multiplied by 16 vertices with 32 edges and 24 faces, because it's 8 cubes altogether. And it's not like they're squished together, but rather there's enough space that it allows it to exist in one object in four-dimensional space. So when we read about things like Banasura had 1,000 arms, you figure like, how does he get 1,000 arms on one trunk? Or like Ravana had 10 heads. How do you stick that on top of his shoulders? You can very easily do it in other dimensions. There's plenty of space in other dimensions. And in order to understand, because as soon as we understand, then the mind will be able to see. So the way to do this is through a logical progression. So here we have in the next slide. Okay, so let's say we start with just a point in space. So that point, for the sake of argument only, just in mathematics, this point has no length and no breadth. It's just a point in space with an indeterminate length and breadth. So if you take that point and then you put another point somewhere else in space, and then you put points all the way along to join those 2 points together, that would form a line. So if you look at this here, again, we have our piece of paper. So we have a point here, and then you've got a point here, and if you join those 2 points together, that becomes a line. So that's considered the first dimension. It gives length. So if you take another point and you put it somewhere else that is outside of that line, in other words, let's say to 90 degrees, you put it here, then what you do is you stack those lines on top of each other, and then they become a plane. So you've got length, and then you've got height as well. So that's the second dimension. So if you take this plane, and then you take another point and you put it out somewhere else outside of the plane, and you try and connect those two, then it becomes a cube. So if you're looking at the video that I have here, you see how this works. It's like you've got these a square, which is a plane, and if you put 3 of those planes together, you see there's a gap in between them. So if you want to close up that space, the only way you can do it is by folding it into or popping out into another dimension. So from the plane dimension, if you pop out from the second dimension to the third dimension, then it closes. And then if you put those 2 objects together, it becomes a standard cube. So now you're in the third dimension. So the interesting thing about this is that everybody knows what a cube looks like. Everybody knows what a 3-dimensional object looks like. That's how we live. However, your eyes only see in 2 dimensions. And we can say this because, here's another image of a plane, because you're looking at a computer screen right now, but as soon as depth is added by different angles, your mind, your intelligence compensates for it, and your mind sees in 3 dimensions. Our eyes only see in 2. It's not possible for our eyes to see in 3. But because we have intelligence, it tells the mind that no, this is an extra dimension, this is the 3rd dimension. So by logical progression, you can also train the mind to see in 4 dimensions. So what we're going to do here is, if you're watching this illustration, here's the plane, and then it goes into cubes. So there's 3 cubes together, and just like we folded up those 3 planes and tried to press in the space, and the only way you can fold it in is by going to another dimension. The same with the 4th dimension. If you fold in that space, you can go to the 4th dimension by taking a 3-dimensional object, 3-dimensional cubes, and folding them into themselves and popping into the 4th dimension. So you can't actually see this, but you can imagine it. So we're going to go to the next slide. There's different methods to do this. One method is the shadow method. So if you're looking at this, you see, whoops, went to the wrong slide. There you go. So you see how it's rotating, and you can see the shadow of how it's moving. That gives you an idea. But then there's a better way. There's a wireframe method. The wireframe method, you can kind of like see through it as if it was glass, like a glass house. And as you rotate it, you can see what's going on. You can see all corners, and you can imagine, cube rotating in space. The whole point is we're trying to get to the point of imagining a hypercube, a tesseract. So when we go to the next slide, there's 2 ways to do this. One is the oblique projection. So here you see you have a plane, and to get it, the plane to become, to represent a cube, you extrude it to the back, and then you connect it with edges. So as you see here, what's happening, you've got the red plane in front, and then the blue plane in back, and then the green lines, they represent the I just messed up the word. How come I can't remember the word? Exude. Anyway, extrude. Sorry, extrude.
Extrude?
Yes, I was trying to say extrude.
Extruded.
Okay, so then you get a cube. Now, sorry. Just echoing. So if we go to, how many speakers are up too loud? It's echoing. Okay, so if we go to the next one, we're going to start with cube. Oops, there we go. Okay, we're going to start with a cube in the oblique projection and extrude out into the 4th dimension. So instead of starting with the plane and extruding, you start with a cube and then you extrude. So the red, whoops, gotta go back. The red cube is in the front, and then the blue cube is in the back, and then the lines, the green lines, are the oblique projection. I'm sorry, I'm getting these mixed up. There we go. Okay, let's play that one again. There you go. Okay, so if you can imagine from the sides, from the front, from the back, from underneath, altogether those are 8 cubes. There's also another method, and this is called the perspective method. So in the front is the red cube, and in the back is the blue cube, but the blue cube, from a perspective viewpoint, it looks smaller. Actually, it's not smaller, it's just because of, as we've seen in the photographs we showed previously, when something gets farther away, it looks smaller. So the front cube, you've got this perspective of what a cube looks like if you're looking straight on. So that's from a plane becomes a cube. Now cube is going to become, whoops, why does it keep on doing that? Cube is going to become three-dimensional. We just saw that one. Right there. Okay, here it goes. There you go. Okay, so if I could point something out, what happens when I move my mouse? It moves to the next slide. It's kind of hard to control it. But this blue one is at the back, the red one is in the front, and then you got the top, the bottom, the sides, and then on the very face and on the very back. So there's 8 of them all together. So if you can just imagine that, all of these sides simultaneously you can see, but the reason why some of them look squashed is because of our angle of vision. So as we saw from the one of the previous slides, when you start to rotate it, that's when it looks like it's coming out in different ways. Actually, it's not. It's just our angle of vision is different, and therefore it becomes distorted. So let's go to this one. There's more, about 3 more slides. I'm almost done here. Now, here's another view of the hypercube. Okay, I'm going to start this. So when you, keeps on, my mouse keeps on messing it up. Okay. So the yellow one in the front, the small one, that means it's far away. The larger blue one, that means it's closer up. And then when you separate everything out, you see instead of being squashed, you'll see that they actually come from a regular 3-dimensional cube. There's 8 of them all together. And then there's this crust that it came from, which is the original 3-dimensional cube. So that's how you can see within you, by using your intelligence, the mind can be trained to see something in a 4th dimension. So we've got 2 more slides to go. Okay, so again, we were talking about these 4D polytopes, and we gave the example about the tesseract. So now when you see this and it starts to rotate, it gives you a better understanding of what you're actually looking at. So you see as it starts to spin around, and then it comes around this way. You see if you look at it like from the side, you see how it comes into focus, each one of those sides. And then when you fold it out into 3D space, you can actually see what it really is. So our perception of the world is completely dependent on our understanding of it. For those that are not trained, they think that things that they can't understand are fairy tales, such as the duration of life of Manu, because we can't see it, because we haven't experienced personally this, like at the beginning we showed that, it's just amazing, 20 miles up into the atmosphere compared to like a 1 sheet of paper. That's one of our years, and Manu's lifetime would be just like stacking those sheets of paper to go up 20 miles into the atmosphere. His years, it's fantastic. But those who are untrained for understanding, there are higher dimensions in this world. Physicists accept this as far as geometric shapes go, but why not accept that there's things that are beyond our eyes? When it comes to the Bhagavatam, they hesitate, but we don't, because we've been exposed to this knowledge and we had personal experiences ourselves. So we're much more open to this kind of information. And I tried to show through depiction of, by viewing how our 2-dimensional eyes see 3 dimensions, we can also understand intellectually and therefore see into at least the 4th dimension. So by way of analogy. So that was my presentation. I know that would be a little difficult to understand what I was talking about if you're on the phone. And but anyway, I hope that the slides kind of helped. And anyway, that was it. So what's the time? Okay, we got a few minutes if anybody wanted to add anything or if you had any questions or comments. Is anybody still there?
Yeah,
We're here.
Let's see.
that was
It's
interesting.
got a bunch of stuff on the chat. I can't read through it all. It's a little too much stuff, but anybody have anything they wanted to add?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear.
That was, even visually, that was a little hard to follow. It's a little hard to grasp, a fourth dimension. It's a little, you know, the extruding kind of does it, but it's what makes it the fourth dimension. I mean, you're still dealing with length, breadth, you know, you're dealing with length, width, and depth. That's 3 dimensions, right?
Right.
So what makes making it a fourth?
Yeah, how do you pop into the fourth? Well, it's a logical sequence. That's what I was trying to relate. Because our eyes can only see 2 dimensions, but we readily accept 3 dimensions. We can't live without, understanding what the 3rd dimension is. How are you going to understand? How are you going to be able to walk unless you understand depth? But yet our eyes can only see 2. So in the same way, once you understand that, then it's possible to understand there can be a 4th, 5th, 6th, unlimited dimensions. And just as a two-dimensional world, just of planes. Let me give this example. I hope I can relate this. Let's say you've got this piece of paper here. So this is a plane, a flat plane. If somebody was living, let's say, this is called the Flatlander theory. If there was people that were living in only 2 dimensions, they would be flat like a card. You've seen those cards with jokers on them like that. So let's say their face looked like a joker, and they lived in this world on a flat plane only. All they could see is other lines that are on this plane. And if somebody who lives in a 3rd dimensional world came to them, they would not be able to see 3 dimensions. They wouldn't, like, let's say if a ball came. Oh, here, let me grab something here. Okay, here I got a battery. So here's somebody living on a plane, and then you got somebody who's a battery, and he comes into this world. If he came into this world, they wouldn't be able to see the battery in 3 dimensions. All they would see is they would pop into the world, and then they would see a circle. And they would see the circle kind of growing, and then when it came out, it would disappear. That's all they would see. They wouldn't see 3 dimensions. They would just see a circle grow, and then a circle disappear in their world. So, but there is 3 dimensions. We see it. So why couldn't there be other dimensions? So that's why I was trying to relate how, just like you've got in the Bhagavatam descriptions about Bhamasura with his 1,000 arms, where do you fit the 1,000 arms? Just like on a plane, you're very limited. It's in the world of planes, but as soon as you turn it to a 3-dimensional world, there's lots more space to work with. So similarly, in other dimensions, there's much, much more space. But we're only limited to the dimensions that we have access to.
I would just like to add to that. Another perspective, literally speaking, is when you're in the airplane and you're looking down, and let's say, when you're taking an airplane from LA, or the West Coast to Hawaii, and so the plane is, or even from here, and the higher up you go, if you look down, and you can see the waves moving onto the shore, crashing onto the shore, and it's like they're like in slow motion, whereas when you're down on the ground, you know, they happen at normal speed. And so, and I think even I watched some science show. I kind of like this stuff too, on PBS, where they actually demonstrated, they proved that, you know, like the faster you go, like Einstein proved this, you know, the closer you get to the speed of light or whatever, you're slowing down and quite a bit, where everything else is speeding by, and so you can be, you know, like we think of like the celestial beings and you know, these demigods and the conceptions of universal time according to the Bhagavatam. You know, that everything's just going at different rates, and it just seems inconceivable and impossible for us to understand. But I mean, even materially speaking, science-wise, they've proven it. I mean, you know, they can actually demonstrate that. So yeah, you know, it's inconceivable. You know, our minds are so puny, we can't even imagine what how these things all really fold in, and the different dimensions and how they work, and not to mention in the spiritual world, which is, you know, just beyond any material perception whatsoever. I just want to thank you for such a nice class. Your visual presentations, even on the video, even on your webcam, you know, it's almost like you missed your calling. No, I shouldn't say that. I mean, your calling is a devotee, but I mean, you explain things so well. And, you know, I had science professors in college, and they were very difficult to understand and obscure. You know, they just kind of go off on their own tangents or something. But anyway, you made this, you helped me understand in so many ways in a very clear way. So I could tell you put a lot of work into it, and just want to thank you.
Well, thank you.
Ramananda,
Yeah.
just for some clarity, you said we see in 2 dimensions, but we actually see in 3. We see depth of field.
No, our intelligence,
right?
Our intelligence understands depth, but our eyes actually.
No, we see it. We see depth of field.
Was your
if you have if you lose one eye, then you're have that problem. But if you have 2 eyes,
yeah, because they're separate. Yeah, if we had only one eye, then we could only see one dimensionally. You know, if you cover up one eye, but if you have two, but when you have 2 and they're separate, so they're actually seeing, you know, one eye is actually seeing things from a little bit of a different direction than the other. So we do see things 2-dimensionally.
I'll try.
It's called stereoscopic binocular vision.
When I say see, that I have to define what I mean. There's people that have been, what's the word, congenitally blind? Anyway, blind from birth. And somehow or other, through medical procedures, they were actually given the ability to see, but they could not recognize, because from birth they never saw before. So even though they're physically, their vision was there, the ability to see, because they didn't know what the objects were, they were not able to see. So I tried to give the example that, just like, you know, if you're watching the webcam of me, I'm moving back and forth, you know, I'm talking, you can see my mouth moving, my hand, etc. But you know that this is a flat screen. Doesn't actually have any depth. What you're perceiving is depth by the use of your intelligence. And so because your intelligence understands what you're looking at, it compensates it and gives it depth. The eyes are actually only seeing in 2 dimensions. That's all it can see. but the intelligence interprets the moving, all these different changes through space as giving a depth in the third dimension. And I tried to show that by all those pictures, that those 4 slides, how, if you look at it, something, you can't tell what it is, and all of a sudden something else pops at it, and then you can always see that other object, like the last one with the lion and the elephant. Then your mind sees it because you understood what it was and you recognize it. So it's actually, unless I'm wrong, but what, boy, I can't imagine.
Hare Krishna, Ramananda, I can help you out with some more examples. If you go to a 3D movie, you are just seeing like you were saying, the flat screen, but because you have 2 eyes, they can make it look like it's 3D, but you're still just seeing the flat screen. Nothing is coming out of that screen.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that example you gave of the flat sheet of paper and the battery, that's very much like what happens in Flatland when the sphere comes to visit the Flatlander who's in prison. And the whole novel is just, it takes you from being actually, you're a Flatlander, and then you learn to be in the 3rd dimension, and then you learn to see in the 4th dimension by reading the book. And so I've spent some time thinking about this, maybe a waste of time, but anyway, what my example is, if anybody were to ask me, we all understand 2 dimensions and a 2-dimensional hologram. If you can imagine, and you really have to imagine, if you can imagine a hologram in 3D, then you'd get a little bit better idea of what the 4th dimension is, because everything exists everywhere. And that's, it, like Vidugdha was saying, that's such a stretch on the mind. But once you grasp it, like those pictures, I didn't get to see them, but I've seen some of them before. Once you grasp it, then you can understand how you can get the inside of an egg out without breaking the shell, because everything exists everywhere. But you have to read, like for me, I had to read the book Flatland in order to understand, to be able to think that way. But anyway, so I preach about reading Flatland all the time. I would like to say that
Uh-oh. Can anybody hear me?
hello, Haribo.
Oh, yeah. Martha,
I can hear you quite well.
as soon as you said, I would like to say, I didn't hear anything. So I'm sorry. I don't know why this program, I complained about it. I don't know why, but anyway, I didn't hear anything.
Oh, you didn't get to hear my explanation?
No, I didn't hear a thing. I said, I would like to say, and then zip, I didn't hear a thing.
Oh, okay. Well, can I watch your presentation online? Will it work then for me? What I'm trying to say is I couldn't see your screen.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Okay. Okay, well, Haribo then.
Anyway, I was hoping to connect what is commonly accepted by theoretical physicists and mathematicians and people that are into geometry. They accept these things, don't have a problem with it. So, then it shouldn't be so strange what's described in the Bhagavatam. I mean, my goodness, if you can accept the Big Bang Theory, I mean, you talk about speculation. They give it down to not only so many billions of years ago this happened, they'll tell you that they know the instant it happened up to minus 10 of a second, the very instant. Geez, it's just crazy. They can't tell definitely what happened a few thousand years ago, and they're going to tell us what happened hundreds of billions of years ago. Anyway, I find that fantastic. personally.
Yeah, they're arrogant. They're being arrogant.
Extremely.
Anyway, it was very interesting watching your presentation. I did the first cartoon. I wanted, you know, it's 3, it's 4. I want that one. But the videos, they it wasn't just a delay. It was you know, the bandwidth was choking or something, and it's a very simple video. It's not a you know, doesn't look like it would have to be a very high you know, like a heavy file. So I don't know why, but GoToMeeting doesn't allow easily video, evidently.
So you didn't see it so clear on your end.
It was choppy, and it was from one still frame to another, and you know, there occasionally stream, occasionally.
Yeah, especially to get the you really need to see a steady video to get a real feel for it. Without that, it's pretty difficult. So that's a shame. Okay. Anyway.
It was very interesting. I mean, it's not an easy thing to explain.
So this is still choppy, what you're seeing right now?
Actually, this is running a little better for some reason.
Ah, okay.
This one actually is running better now than it was before. And I don't know why.
Okay, Prabhus. Well, thank you for giving me your ear for a little while here. And by the way,
Thank you.
we're going to have Mother Narayani coming real soon. And she probably is going to be giving classes while she's here for a few weeks. She's also, of course, going to visit the Big Island, but she'll be in Honolulu for most of the time. So most probably she'll give a few classes while she's here. And then we have another very scholarly Mataji, Krishna Priya Mataji in Vrindavan. And she also is very much like Mother Narayani, very scholarly person. And she also wants to start giving some classes. So that'll be nice. I hope broadcasting from Vrindavan will work because, you know, it's not real reliable. But we'll give it a try.
Right.
Try.
All right.
Bull.
So thank you, Prabhus.
Thank you, Ramananda Prabhu.
Thank
All
you.
glories to
Haribol, Ramananda.
Yes, yes.
Before you hang up, can you help me with this? It says waiting to view Ramananda Dasa's screen. Is there anything you need to do?
No, I don't know why.
So what would I do in order to stop waiting and actually view Ramananda's screen?
I don't know. Maybe I'll give you a call later and we can try and figure out what happened. But yeah, obviously other people saw, so I don't know why.
Okay, and it's funny that you couldn't hear me. You would have liked what I had to say.
No,
maybe.
It's just because there's a defect on this thing. Every class it drops today it dropped 3 or 4 times, but usually it drops for me at least twice during the class. So anyway, that's what happened.
This is
It didn't go off.
Yeah, GoToMeeting. So anyway.
So something to consider.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's got its drawbacks. All right. Thank you, Prabhus. All glories to Srila
Thank you, Haribol.
Adi.
Jai.
Haribol. Haribol.